Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, this is actually the second time ever we have a pandesal forum on a Sunday. The other time, a few months ago, it was a senator from Indonesia came here to speak on a Sunday. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a very unique pandesal forum here at 84-year-old Kamuning Bakery Cafe. We have with us two outstanding intellectuals. Here beside me, Dr. Aaron Jedrabena. He is a top geopolitics and politics analyst, also with Asia Pacific Pathways for Progress Foundation as fellow and intellectual. And also we have via Zoom one of the top geopolitics and economics and politics analysts, Professor Ana Malindog-Uy. Via Zoom, they will both be analyzing a very interesting topic that I recently only discovered because we are very centered on our own Philippine affairs and also about the West. We know more about NBA pa than what's happening about in our neighbors. In China pala, our neighbor and the world's second largest economy now, with 1.4 billion people, consumer market, they are having a very important political event this weekend. We will ask Dr. Rabena and Dr. Malindogoy, Professor Malindogoy mamaya, what this is all about, why even on a Sunday they are working, their leaders. And also, we have one or two Filipino journalists right now in Beijing covering this event. We will try to hook up and talk to them. Right now, as we are talking, the major event is happening. It started 9 a.m. We'll ask Dr. Rabena and Professor Ana to give us a short overview what this is all about in their opening statement. Then we'll try to hook up sa Beijing with the journalists if they could talk to us, yung mga Filipino journalists, ano nangyayari doon, and why we should be concerned about this. And why this event, I believe, could be possible good news for the whole of Asia. As we are coming out of the global pandemic and as we are sustaining Philippine economic recovery. And hopefully better bilateral ties with our neighbor. Welcome, Dr. Aaron Jedrabena. Can we invite you to give an opening statement, just an overview, your own idea what this is all about. Ang shortcut name nila, I researched, I was surprised last night and yesterday, I looked up all the Western media, the major Western media, Washington Post, New York Times, Bloomberg, CNBC, The Guardian. This seems to be a major event in the world. It's called I think the shortcut for this major event is called 2 sessions. Welcome, Dr. Aaron Jedrabena. Kamusta your Sunday? Baka you'd like extra coffee, ha? Here, extra coffee pandesal.
Thank you po, Sir Wilson. Happy Sunday and good morning po to everyone. Well, actually, sir, these 2 sessions, this is the most important political event in China that they conduct annually, which we should not confuse with their party congress. Kasi ito pong 2 sessions, sir, this is about China's state institutions, while the party congress concerns their party institutions. And for this year, kaya po siya 2 sessions kasi on the one hand, you conduct the National People's Congress comprised of delegates from China's provinces, municipalities, the armed forces, and other political parties in China. On the other hand, another session, yun po yung one session. No? The other session is yung CPPCC, yung Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Ito yung group of people, mga advisors that provide inputs to the NPC. So the NPC po, it's the largest legislative organ of the state, while the CPPCC provides inputs po. So this political event happens in China annually, sir, and it lasts for usually 2 weeks.
2 weeks special session ito.
Yes, sir.
So, if you compare it with Philippine politics, it's like the State of the Nation address sona ni Presidente.
Yes, sir. It's like the State of the Nation address or the State of the Union address plus more. Kasi apart from the Premier making his, the government work report, the other government departments would also deliver their reports, and they will discuss their budget for the next year, what had transpired for in the last year, and what their plans and policies will be for the next year. So, makikita natin kung ano po magiging priorities nila, sir.
I heard you mentioned that this is, later on we'll invite Professor Anna. You said this is once a year. Maybe the question later on. So I'll invite si Anna naman to give her opening statement. Professor Anna Malindogoy, can we invite her via Zoom? Kung okay na. Nasa Zoom si Professor Anna Malindogoy to speak also. Nakapasok na siya. Pakisignal na lang ha. While we are waiting for Professor Anna Malindogoy, you were saying kanina, Professor Jet, na this is once a year event. But I heard this year may be more special than the other annual meeting because they will announce a new set of leaders now.
Yes, sir.
Totoo ba yan? And they will be there for several years?
Yes, sir. So there will be a new set of leaders for new members of the State Council. It's like their cabinet. And there will be a new premier. And at the same time, there will President Sipo will be elected formally as the third-term president.
The election is this term?
Yes, sir. He will be elected
one.
po as the president. Kasi yung last year po was the party congress. That was his election po as the general secretary
Of the party.
This time po we're talking about the state.
So this will formalize his re-election, presidency, and he will usher in a new team.
That's right, sir. Apo, that's
Very
right.
interesting.
New foreign minister and
Yes. Can we invite Professor Anna Malindogoy for her opening statement? Para paki-explain naman, Professor Anna, bakit importante to for China, for Asia, Philippines, and why on a Sunday? Curious pala mamaya. Thank you. Welcome, Professor Anna Malindogoy. She is one of the top geopolitics analysts in the Philippines, Vice President of the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies think tank, also economist, and a research cum laude graduate of University of the Philippines Political Science, and almost soon PhD pa in economics. Welcome, Professor Anna Malindogoy.
Thank you, Maxon. So that's introduction. I think the NTC or the two session is very important. It's not only for, because it will, sabi nga ni Jet kanina, it will actually tease out the different legislative agenda, and also, actually, they will also make amendments to some of the laws of China if they see something that needs to be amended. Tapos, doon din makikita natin what are the priority areas, especially in terms of domestic issues that the new government, kasi it will from that two session, a new government will be born, something to that effect. Though I am pretty sure that President Xi Jinping will stay as president, but I think there will be some changes in some of the most important positions in Chinese government. And at the same time, this is also, the world will see what will be the priority of China with reference to its international relation, meaning its foreign policy. Because it's not only the domestic side, I think that's very important, especially for observers like us who are outsiders, but we can also see later on what would be the Chinese, the foreign policy of the Chinese government. Mas klarado yan, mas maputis out yan. At the same time, you will also see yung kanyang mga economic priorities that definitely will impact the world. Because as you can see, China is the largest economy and it is also an economic powerhouse in the world at the moment. It's a major trading partners of almost all countries of the world. So doon pa lang, makikita natin na kailangan natin tignan at bigyan pansin kung ano nga ba ang mga discussions that magiging result ng tinatawag nating two sessions na magaganap na ngayon. Kasi ngayon actually is the opening. And then in the next coming days, we will have that meeting for 10 days and then we will have the closing. I think the closing will be roughly around 15 of March or something to that effect. Kasi 10 days yan ang thing. So very important dito kasi China is a major power and a major player in the world, especially when we talk about economics. And probably we can see as well impact nito sa tinatawag natin Philippine-China relations and other issues that is important to the country. So magandang sundan at tignan kung ano magiging outcome ng two sessions nito. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindog-Uy, for giving us an overview of this interesting event called the two sessions. Ang ganda ng explanation ninyong dalawa. May nagtanong dito, journalists. Most of the journalists are still asleep at the world. Why on a Sunday morning they are still working? I could not believe. Why on a Sunday morning the leaders of China, siyempre leader ka, boss ka, dapat natutulog ka ng late sa Sunday morning. Why are they still working? So, can they do it on a Monday morning? I'm curious lang ako. Why masipag sila?
Well, Sir Wilson, I think clearly this shows that the Chinese they're not a Christian country. And this is only, sir, kasi this is just a two-week event. So they really would want to maximize, this two-week event. So even on a Sunday, they want to be efficient, sir. So to see to it that they will be very productive.
So they want to be very efficient talaga in this enjoyment. There's a question here for both of you. Any expectations or possible good news for Asia and the Philippines from this event? Because this comes after the 3-year lockdown of China and the global pandemic. And there are reports, I was researching last time about this event, and Bloomberg News of New York said that even the leaders of China were surprised at the speed of the recovery of the Chinese economy. So, is this also good timing because they will have a new team, new premier who I read is going to focus on the economy and is good on the economic field? Any high hopes or expectations from both of you? Yes, Professor Ana Malindog-Uy, about the economy, the economic recovery, even foreign policy. We'll try to hook up to Beijing with the journalists.
Oo, please. Mas maganda makita natin kung ano nangyayari sa Beijing at the moment. By the way, yes, I think the Chinese economy, we would really talk about it. Probably, I'm not saying that there are no challenges to the Chinese economy, no? There are, of course, like any country. But when you talk about trajectory and real projection, it will have a positive projection. Kasi even before the opening, even before nag-reopen sila, kasi nga they were close to some extent, na hindi naman close talaga, but it was close to a greater extent na ang tempered ang travel during the COVID-19, kasagsagan ng COVID-19, and lately lang sila nag-open up to a greater extent, but still calibrated in many ways. But I think it will open up more in a matter of time. Marami ng mga flights in and out of China, and I think there's a lot of business people in and out of China, even students are in and out of China already. So you can see the opening up, no, of China after the COVID-19 pandemic. Nagbago ang policy nila, medyo wala na masyadong restrictions, there's no more quarantine, everything is going back to normal. That's one thing that I can assure you. Beijing right now, even though China is going back to its normal situation before the pandemic. So given that, in terms of economic activity, it's really like how do you call it? Mas active siya in many ways, active in and out, no? At saka yung border trade, trading with other countries is also having a positive trajectory. So if that is the case, I mean, just on the onset, no, given that very how do you call that, overview, very broad overview and broad stroke, no, of looking at the Chinese economy, it will have a positive trajectory. So it means that the recovery will be fast and will be positive in many ways. So it means that its GDP will grow. But of course, we have to remember that it has its own domestic problems as well. And the government is trying to address. One of them probably is the population. They're addressing the aging population of China. That's one. But that problem is it's already being addressed at the moment. But of course, it's one of the, I think, critical problem when you talk about the economy. Now, when you talk about the foreign policy, I think in these two sessions, there are important foreign policy probably issues that China will talk about more, and I think will be defined further. First and foremost, I think it's very important for the international community to look at the international independent foreign policy of China. As what I can sense since the CPC conference last time, it will be an independent foreign policy based on peace. And actually, if you look at the Ukraine crisis, they're trying to have trying to broker a peace deal. So that is a very important aspect that we need to look at, and I think we need to monitor the so-called independent foreign policy of China and peace. Another one I think is more on how China will try to promote what you call peaceful settlement of different issues or conflict existing in the world, including in our side of the world. No? So that is a very important thing that we need to see, no, after the whole session. And another one I think very interesting is what you call the Global Security Initiative. It is being proposed, has been proposed actually in the United Nations by President Xi. So it's interesting to see how they're gonna piece it out and how they're gonna present it after the whole session or after the whole time that they will be discussing all of these things. These are important foreign policy issues. I think that China will be discussing in that session, and the world should look at and also focus on. Because definitely, given that China is a major player, not only economics, but even in politics, it will have an impact in the world. And we can also see the dynamics, how other countries will react to it. So, yun yung mga interesting for me, no? That's for me, na mga issues na I think to be tackled in the two congresses in the next 2 weeks. Kasi 2 weeks yan eh. Yeah.
So this is a 2-week session. Wow. 2 weeks. Will the announcement be... I'm trying to contact a Filipina journalist, Miss Lisa Agot, nasa Beijing. Miss Lisa Agot.
And Wesley Chua is...
Yes, Mr. Wesley Chua. We'd like to contact them to report to us what's happening right now. Pwede paki-contact si Miss... And then, maybe while I'm trying to contact her, we could ask you and Dr. Jen Rapena naman. Mr. Dr. Rapena, what are your hopes about the economy of China impact on the Philippines and Asia economy, and also foreign policy. Because I read that the foreign minister who was recently named will be formally named also this session. And even I read in the foreign media, Western media report, a new defense minister, everyone knew. Can you, what expectations for Philippines and Asia?
Yes, Sir Wilson. Actually, I would just like to add to what Ms. Anna said about yun po, no, the implications of this for us. Well, China, of course, is the world's second largest economy. And whatever happens in China, of course, affects us, let alone that we are China's neighbor. And this was clearly demonstrated when the COVID-19 pandemic happened. So for these two sessions, I think makikita po natin kung ano yung magiging attitude ng China for the next year and the next 5 years with the new selection of their government heads. And baka makakita rin po tayo ng follow-through on the Belt and Road Initiative. And in addition to the Global Security Initiative and the Global Development Initiative, and of course they might also say something about their attitude towards the U.S., given that really the Americans are tightening the economic sanctions and restrictions against them, and also their stand on the war in Ukraine. So these things are on the foreign policy front might get some follow-through. And for us or as China's neighbors, because I think in the regional security environment for China is that they might be seeing a formation of various minilaterals. So they might also say something about that. Okay, sir. And yes, sir, I think Foreign Minister Qin Gang will be the new foreign minister, and let's see what their priorities will be in the coming year and the next 5 years.
Thank you. I heard that, is it true? I will ask the two analysts here. I read before that the appointment of Foreign Minister Qin Gang and is an effort to be more friendly, diplomatic PR approach. Originally, that was because he is the former China ambassador in Washington, D.C., USA. Despite all this debate and conflict, I think before the balloon incident of China was trying to stabilize and normalize ties. Is it true?
If I may, sir, actually, if you would look at the Chinese diplomats, sir, they're not one and the same. Their personalities, their attitudes, may nuances din po yan. I'll give an example, sir. When, who was that? The previous spokesperson of the Chinese Foreign Ministry? I think who was tagged as the first wolf warrior diplomat?
Yes, formerly very articulate and very
Yes, actually, sir,
aggressive.
when he started what he tweeted on Twitter, China's ambassador to the US then, Cui Tiankai, expressed a different view. So I think you can see, sir, that there are some, variations when it comes to Chinese diplomats.
Different
also.
style.
Yes, yes. In advancing their national interest, in articulating their policy stance. Yeah. So yun po, sir. Iba-iba.
Professor Anna, I'm trying to contact her.
The new foreign minister was chosen. I think it's precisely because he was the former ambassador to the United States. I think it's one of the noteworthy factor why also was chosen. But of course, he is also very capable, I mean, in terms of, I think it's CV and all of this, capability na maging foreign minister. But I think one significant factor is because of his experience dealing with America. Given that, if you really look at the dynamics between the US and China, when you talk about this geopolitical rivalries, economics, and politics, it's intensifying at the moment. So I think, for me, it's a very advantageous to get someone like him, so that who understand how the American psyche and how American politics and dynamics work. Because in most cases, it's really the two of them who are big players and very dominant when you talk about global affairs. So if you have a very adept kind of foreign minister who understand the American psyche to a greater extent, in extension, who will understand how the allies of America works, then probably that's an advantage, I think. No? So that's my reading, that's my personal reading. And also, of course, I mean, the diplomats of China will have different, there's some kind of different specialties or expertise. And I think it's a good choice. For me, the way I see it, it's a good choice. And he's a very, how do you call that, very calm and very calm and
I agree. He looks like a scholar. He looks like a scholar.
Diplomat, and I'm still looking at him and observing how he conducts his diplomatic work. But for me, that's very important, to have that kind of edge in terms of understanding how America works and how the psyche and the politics of America. Because in dealing with a country, if you really want to be effective, you get to know the country more, and because it's the only way. For example, the Philippines, we want to deal really in a very deeply and understand the other side. Like for example, China and the United States and the dynamics and what they think as people and as a nation. No? We need to get to know them better. That's the only way. If you want to forge a deeper relationship or bridge conflict and differences. So that's my perspective. But that's my personal reading. No? Not by my organization or anyone at all. No, it's connected to anyone. That's my personal reading. Thank you.
From ABS-CBN, Miss Jasmine Romero.
The session, I think 9 a.m. first session, and then magkakaroon ng NPC deputy will hear the government work report to be delivered by the premier. Now the premier and I think he will be replaced by someone else because he's a little bit senior already. And then there will be NPC deputy on the implementation of the 2022 plan and on the 2023 draft plan for national economic and social development and the draft plan for national economic and social development in 2023. These are, I think, what will happen in the two sessions. No? And then MPC deputies will review the report on the execution of the central and local budget for 2022 year on an explanation of the draft implementation of legislation law. So it's really like a legislative discussion as well, the NPC or the two sessions. And then there will be voting, and then NPC delegation will hold a meeting to deliberate on the government work report, and then members of the CPPCC National Committee will sit down on the opening meeting of the MPC session as non-voting participants. So these are some of the activities that will happen in the next 10 days, just for everyone to be informed, no? Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Ana Malindog Uy, and also Dr. Jed Rabena. There's a question here for both of you from Miss Jasmine Romero of ABS-CBN. Ang tanong ni Jasmine Romero, how will the change in government leaders in China today affect the issues surrounding the West Philippine Sea and its relations with us in the Philippines? Any projections, both of you, on any possible change? Especially, you mentioned earlier, you have a new foreign minister who is very friendly, the image, very conciliatory. In fact, I was researching yesterday, he was visiting several European countries in the past few days, and I saw in the pictures, very friendly and very engaging talk. Any projection from both of you on the West Philippine Sea issue and others related to the Philippines?
Yes, sir. Actually, yung personal touch to diplomacy actually really helps Sir Wilson in promoting mutual interests, common interests, and I think a good case, sir, would be what we've seen recently when Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim met with President Marcos. You would see how natural they interacted with one another. And so since you have this, I would agree, sir, that Foreign Minister Chin Gang is very congenial. And so that I think maybe he can easily build rapport with his counterpart here and with President Marcos. So that could, smooth things out, and that could, pave the way for more constructive talking points going forward, sir.
Thank you, Professor. Si Professor. Ay, by the way, you mentioned Malaysia and Philippines. I'm just curious, how come our politicians, our media friends, never raise the issue of Sabah passionately, emotionally, every time Philippines and Malaysia meet? No? And well, I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Why this little islands, not even islands, some of them, it's we always are very angry and you know. Why about the Sabah where you have like a million Filipinos or a few 100,000 Filipinos? I'm just curious. Maybe later on we could discuss that. Professor Ana Malindukoy, question of Miss Jasmine Romero about Philippines-China relations. Any effect of this major political event?
On the South China Sea, no? Yun ba ang tanong? Medyo hindi ko narinig eh.
Yes. Ang tanong ni Miss Jasmine Romero, these major political changes today happening in China, how will this affect the dispute in the West Philippine Sea and South China Sea and other Philippines-China issues, maybe even the economy? Because how will it affect Philippines and China issues and relations?
Okay, ito'y ano ko lang ha, this is
Your
just my
own
reading, no?
projections, yes.
Again, this is my personal reading about
Or your
these
hopes.
issues, no? Especially the West Philippine Sea, where part of our involved, that's a dispute we have with China. But if you really, I mean, if you look at China at the moment, and even I think no, in the MPC, I mean, they will try to tease out more or discuss what you call the Global Security Initiative, which has been proposed already by President Xi in the UN before, and when he kind of discussed a little. Discuss it in one of the UN session, I think before, and now it's also something that is quite part of the kind of Chinese part of the Chinese diplomacy across the world. No, now if you look at the Global Security Initiative framework, the framework is all about maintaining and sustaining peace across the globe. GSI adheres to the concept of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. It is advocating a new path to security that features dialogue over confrontation, partnership over alliance, and win-win over zero-sum game. Basically, GSI principle or the Global Security Initiative principle is very important if you really look at and you be open-minded in how peace or what you call how you can resolve conflict. So given this, you can already see that if in any case, I think China will still be maintaining that position that resolving dispute or conflict of interest, may it be in the disputed South China Sea or anywhere in the world, should be addressed and resolved diplomatically, peacefully, through open and honest dialogue and sincere dialogue between parties. Like, for example, with us, China and the Philippines, I think that's the direction that they have. Because that is very much part of the framework of the so-called Global Security Initiative. This is, the GSI is China's proposal or approach toward conflict resolution and peace promotion in the most pragmatic way. And that's the direction. The way I see it, that's the direction of China when you talk about these issues and in the context of international relation, in the context of foreign policy. So when you put the South China Sea issue or the disputed South China issue between China and the Philippines and other claimant states, I think that's the direction. Peaceful resolution of the conflict, diplomatic way, and through dialogue and negotiations. Of course, as we can see, the South China Sea is disputed. There are It's a very delicate situation and complex. So I think on our side, we need to try to stick to that peaceful and diplomatic negotiation because that is the way forward. We cannot resolve the
Thank you.
conflict in another forceful way, I think. No, so
Thank,
I think that is a signal to the current government that we have to stick to, and also peaceful and diplomatic way of resolving conflict is actually embedded in the UN Charter. So I think that's the way because the GSI basically upholds the United Nations, whatever is the principle and enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. If you really look at the GSI, it upholds that. So in a way, ganon ang direction nila, I think, when you talk about conflict resolution or dispute resolution across the world, not necessarily just the West Philippine Sea. So tingin ko ganon ang framework at ganon ang magiging direction. Pero of course, there are also realities on the ground. So yung mga realities on the ground, yun yung kailangan natin pag-ingatan at tignan na sana walang miscalculations na mangyayari. Kasi that's a different issue, no? That's a different dynamics. So yun ang tingin ko. And I really hope also that that is the direction of all countries in the world, including the Philippines. Na ang resolution ng conflict is supposed to be, should be peaceful, diplomatic, and open-mindedness should be there. So yun. Thank you. Yun lang ang tingin ko ha. Tingin ko lang
thank
naman
you,
yan.
Professor Ana Malindog. Uy, update from CNN. This is from CNN International. China today, this morning, the Premier just announced China's target economic growth for this year, 2023, is around 5% economic growth, which is quite dramatic for an economy that is the number 2 largest in the world, because that is good news for the world. In a world with a lot of economic uncertainties, there are many reports that Western countries are in recession. In Europe, there are even reports since last year, USA is actually in recession or going to recession. There are fears the world might go into recession. But if you have one of the 2 biggest pillars of the world, which is China, USA, confidently saying they are targeting 5% growth now in the world this year, economic growth. And Premier Li Keqiang, they are still working. You're correct, Dr. Ravena. The Premier of China is working on a Sunday. This meeting pala of 3,000 delegates right now in the Great Hall of the People, he announced that they are targeting 5% economic growth. What are your projections effect on Philippines-China trade, on Philippine economic growth also? Because that is a big market. We are the biggest trading partner of the Philippines and ASEAN is China. Can you make projections?
Yes, Sir Wilson.
Uh-uh.
I think yung 5% po, sir, no, was a similar target that they made for 2022. So I think it's good to monitor this because now they've recently opened up, so they might really achieve this target po, sir, no, ngayon na talaga nag-open na sila. And if I may just add a while ago, sir, sa changes ng personnel in their state institutions, I think we will also see, sir, if there will be more continuities in their policies or slight or more changes. So it remains to be seen, sir. And in terms of, again, going back to the economy, sir, we'll see if the restructures in the economy that they're doing would lead to more decoupling from the US, or we can also keep track of how their so-called dual circulation model is doing. Meaning in terms of advanced technologies which the Western countries are depriving them of, are they on track to achieving that technological self-sufficiency? And and if China's economy continues to grow, sir, and then that in a way is a good thing for us because China is our top trading partner, and therefore more economic opportunities might come to us. Yeah.
Thank you. So, possible good news for Philippine economy. Professor Ana Malindogoy, what is your projection on Philippine-China economic relations, on the effect on the Philippine economy now that they are confident of 5% economic growth and reforms?
Actually, yung 5% economic growth is a target that they are setting. Pero this is not new because if you really look at China before the COVID-19 pandemic, the growth is even beyond 5%. It's sometimes 8 to 9%. I think the 5% even is a conservative estimate or target of the current of the Chinese government, no? Parang conservative nga ito eh. Pero one thing that you have to remember about China, China is really a growing economy that is now more of technologically driven one. Technologically driven sila at the moment. And if you look at China, it is one of the very important global manufacturer in the world, and the drivers, and this is the driver of the one of the drivers, no, of economic performance of China across for certain period of time. And also if you look at China, ang isa sa mga ano nila, parang edge nila din is the the highly competitive labor force that they have. I'm telling you, they are, when it comes to labor force, they're highly competitive. And when you talk about investment in the domestic economy, it's really there as well. So ang dynamic ng kanilang ang kanilang economy. So I think this 5%, despite the fact na there is such a thing as an imposed US trade war against China, kasi tignan mo naman, no, ang daming maraming dynamics ang US-China relationship, especially in the economic front, no. But I think itong 5% is a calibrated one, and probably this is a conservative. So we'll see. It's very how do you call it, exciting to see how China will, navigate its economic developments, achieving its target, and how it will impact countries like our country. For me, the way I see it from an economic point of view, we need to take that opportunity. We need to grab that opportunity that China now has opened up. We need to take that opportunity to send to participate in its very dynamic market, which is so large. And then probably we should take the opportunity of asking or lobbying for investment in our country, especially in infrastructure. They are good in infrastructure, especially when you talk about transportation infrastructure. And other countries in ASEAN are taking that opportunity and chance, especially Indonesia. Look at Indonesia; they're so wise, really. They're capturing that kind of investments from China to go to Indonesia. And even Vietnam is also very wise in this game. So I hope the Philippines will not focus in geopolitical issues because these are really costly for us. We should focus our eyes on economic development and try to have that very good how do you call that, economic relationship with China. We cannot ignore China. It's a huge elephant in the whole world right now, especially when you talk about economics. So I think that should be the direction. The political side is very important because if your if your political relationship with China is not good, our economic relationship with them to a certain extent will be affected. So those issues in the disputed South China Sea, it can be resolved by talking it out with them and getting some kind of middle ground. But if the government will intensify it and will make it like a big issue, shadowing the economic front and the economic benefits that we can possibly get with this kind of opening of China and trying really hard to recover. I think the Chinese are very determined to push their economy up. So mawawala tayo sa maunahan tayo ng mga ASEAN neighbors natin na very active sila ngayon in trying to forge very deep and good relation with China, especially economically speaking. So yun yung dapat nating isipin kasi the end of the day, our economy is tied to China. If it's tied to the United States to a certain extent, it is also tied to China. So yun, na sana makita ng ating gobyerno at mapag-isipang mabuti kasi importante ito para sa bayan. So yun ang tingin ko.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindog. Uy, tinatry ko mag-contact yung dalawang journalist. I think si Miss Lisa Agot is from PTV4. Mr. Wesley Chua is from Chinese Commercial News of Manila. I tried to contact both of them if we could interview them. They said the session pala in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing is happening right now. The Chinese government leaders are making their reports and projections, and the journalists are not allowed to stand or to go to the CR to interrupt. So we cannot interview them pala. Akala ko we could interview them. And then the Singapore Channel News Asia, I was reading, they said people expect 5% economic growth this year. Last year was 3% or 2%. But they said they're expecting the Chinese leaders might even announce higher economic growth like what Professor Ana said earlier. So that is possible good news for the Philippines. We should watch out for it. Because if China really is dynamic, is growing very fast, many economists and business people are saying this will be very big good news for the Philippine economy. Kaya this is one of the reasons we have this Pandesal Forum. There were some business tycoons also asking me, uy, gawa ka nga ng Pandesal Forum din about this. Because the news in the Singapore, British, and US news, they're saying the biggest priority of these two sessions now is economic recovery and economic reforms. Anything else you'd like to ask? Ay, ito pa pala, I was reading the news here. This session is all the way, whole day up to afternoon pala. So these 3,000 leaders of China meeting now at the Great Hall of the People will be meeting kanina pang 9 a.m. all the way up to 3, 4 o'clock. Anything you can say about the economy, about Philippines, and these two sessions?
Okay, sir. Sir, just to add about yung sa economic projection po ng China, I think last year the reason why they only had a modest economic growth rate was because they were still in a lockdown economy. But now that they have opened up or reopened, so they've actually entered into a post-pandemic economy. So we might, it's very likely that we will see an uptick in their economic growth for this year. And to add more, sir, about these two sessions, the NPC and CPPCC, actually, sir, the NPC, the composition of it, the deputies, they are not all Communist Party members. Some belong to minority political parties. The Chinese call this the multi-party cooperation. Like in the Philippines, sir, we have po yung multi-party system. But in China, it's multi-party cooperation, meaning that it's the Chinese Communist Party that leads the other political parties. And in the CPPCC, sir, how significant this is the composition is multi-sectoral. So they come from the business sector, they come from the academe, from the
farmers,
yes, sir, the agriculture, etc. And even famous personalities like Yao Ming and Jackie Chan, they were actually representatives to the CPPCC because they are men of influence and they represent their respective industries.
I read there are even also Hong Kong representatives. Hong Kong?
Yes, sir. In the NPC, you have deputies from the Macau and Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, sir. They're represented there. Yeah.
I'm curious, are there representatives from Taiwan? Did they have a area for Taiwan or wala?
There is a Taiwan political party, Kuomintang, something like that, sir. Because
remnants of the party in
yes,
China?
sir, in mainland China, sir.
Ah,
yeah.
very interesting. Any other questions, please feel free to ask. Yes, may tanong.
Good morning po.
Yes.
I'm Melody from Radyo Filipino America.
Yes.
Actually, I saw it in the news, yung mga BBC, whatever.
Yes.
What do you think is your stand about the TikTok, something TikTok? It's called,
Interesting.
They start banning it because it's a security threat. What do you think
That's
about
very interesting, yes.
what about the stand of China, or what is your personal opinion sa
Yes.
Pilipinas? Kasi ang dami pong TikTok users sa Philippines.
Thank you, very interesting. What is your reaction daw from Radio Filipino? What is your reaction to attempts by the US, I think, particularly, they are trying to curtail or block the success and popularity of TikTok in America? I think that's the question. Not exactly related to the two sessions, but the two analysts here, anyone here wants to comment on that? TikTok. Yung microphone pakiayos.
Kasi po yung TikTok is produced by China, di ba?
Yes.
And then the US is banning them because
Trying to ban it. Yes.
security threats daw po yun.
They're claiming, yes.
Oo,
They're-
claiming security threats. And then sa Philippines po, ano po sa tingin nyo, ibaban kaya din yung TikTok sa Philippines? Kasi economy yun ng China di ba? And then
Personally, I think it's like Facebook only and Twitter. What are your thoughts about TikTok? I want to open a TikTok account. Kasi makiki-millennial ako eh. Ano reaction niyo daw about TikTok? Kung wala ka sa TikTok, hindi ka millennial daw eh. Ano ka daw, medieval ka daw?
For me, I'm not surprised, to be honest, if the United States is banning TikTok. I think the United States right now is just banning everything that has something to do with China. Like, for example, the
Economy,
balloon and then the TikTok now. But for the Philippines, I am not sure about that. It depends on the government. But ang daming user ng TikTok sa Pilipinas, magalit yan sila, oy. But I don't know. I mean, let's see what will happen. I mean, it's in the hands of the government. But hindi ko maintindihan why do you have to ban the TikTok? I mean, like, so many people. Facebook, come on, give me a break. We'll talk about this kind of stuff like, security spy. Facebook is there. And what do you think of Facebook? Come on, But what I'm saying is like, ganun talaga. Parang hindi na surprising yan na the United States is blocking TikTok or banning TikTok. But sa Pilipinas, well, it really depends on the government. Kasi at the moment, maraming user ang TikTok. And so baka magalit naman ang mga millennials kasi sila yung mahilig sa TikTok eh. Ako, wala akong alam masyado sa
Thank you.
TikTok.
I think-
Hindi ako gumagamit ng TikTok eh.
I think it's part of their economic, if they cannot compete, they will block you. Ganyan ba yun? Yung Toshiba, in the 1980s, is it true that the US tried to downgrade or block Toshiba or something of Japan? There was this Plaza or something, Accord ba yun or something?
Japan.
They tried to, because they could not compete technologically with Japan at one time, they tried to block the technology company of Japan. What are your analysis?
Sir Wilson, I think yung this possible censorship po by the US or blocking of TikTok is a result of the deteriorating political relationship between the US and China. The more their relationship deteriorates, the more bilateral, issue areas will be securitized and politicized. And therefore, this is why we're seeing this. I think the specific concern, Sir Wilson, by the Americans is that the Chinese state is out of privacy concerns. They allege that the Chinese state gets access to these data of the American users on TikTok. So I think this is the contention right now, sir. And if it's possible, if it will spill over here in the Philippines, some quarters might echo that. But during the time of President Duterte, sir, spokesperson Harry Roque then said that we won't do the same here. In fact, I think, sir, there's an analogy here because when Confucius Institutes in the West were being boycotted or being curtailed. I think a similar call emerged here in the Philippines.
Saka in the 1980s, I researching here, when Japan was rising against, they think against the US, they tried to block Toshiba. There was even in 1987, I researched here, 1987, they said Japan was a threat. There was even a picture of the US congressman smashing Toshiba stereo in the gardens of the capital of the US, 1987, at the height of the US-Japan trade war. So I think all this paranoia, I think is mainly about the trade. Kasi kung TikTok lang, they will get a lot of the dancing kids. Mga dancing tsaka music ng mga teenagers. That is the only insecurity you can get there. Di ba TikTok? Entertainment. Thank you.
I think
There's-
one,
yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
yes, Wilson, I think Dr. Rabena pointed one important thing about this question and issue, no. Sabi nga ni Jed, ano tag nito, it pwedeng mari-echo yan. Katulad nga ng Confucius Institute, that's really true. In Western countries, they're trying to say na the Confucius Institute has other agenda other than teaching Chinese language and culture or sharing Chinese language and culture. And then it was re-echoed in the Philippines to some extent, but hindi naman nangyari talaga. And this time around, you have the TikTok thing. Now, there are certain segments of our society na probably would re-echo such kind of sentiments that is now in, the US government is banning it and dapat dito din sa Pilipinas to a greater extent. Something like that na magre-re-echo niya. Now, it's very interesting. I think that is a very important point that Jed has pointed out. Bakit? It will give us an idea of the kind of foreign policy that the Philippines is pursuing. Is it aligned to the US or not? Or are we following the steps, whatever US decision when it comes to its foreign policy or not? But again, another important point that Jed has said earlier is the Philippines has a different internal conditions and dynamics. So in that sense, it doesn't mean that, we need to follow everything or we need to have that kind of strategic following the steps of whatever the United States doing. So the internal condition of the country supposedly should determine the policies of the country domestically and internationally speaking or foreign policy wise. But that point that Jed has said earlier is very critical in analyzing the foreign policy of the current government. If there will be possibilities na even TikTok will also be banned in the Philippines. But that is remain to be seen kasi wala naman. So we'll see what will happen and we'll see how it goes. But that's a very interesting dynamics, especially when you talk about the foreign policy of the country. And given what is happening in the US, given the dynamics between the US and China, politically speaking and even economically speaking, those are important points that Jed has emphasized earlier and have said. So that's very critical for us.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Professor Ana. And baka may tanong si Mr. Luisito Antonio Santos, andito, taga DCBB. Siya yung Alden Richards ng DCBB. Sabi niya, sa Facebook, nakita ko sa Facebook. Sabi mo, di ba sabi mo sa Facebook? Congratulations for renewing your contract. Nakita ko may nagsabi doon sa Facebook mo.
Thank you.
Ang nagmarita siya si Joanne, yung nandyan sa baba. Sabi niya.
Maraming salamat po. Ako po yung nag-enjoy. Nakikinig po ako sa inyong pag-uusap ngayon.
Yes, baka may tanong ka kay Dr. Jed Rabenda or Ana Malindogoy. Kasi Luisito, ang nangyayari ngayon daw, nagugulat ako sa linggo, nagtatrabaho lahat ng leader ng China, 3,000 pinakamataas na opisyal ng China, kaninang alas 9 ng umaga pa daw, hanggang hapon magmi-meeting non-stop. Sabi ni Dr. Rabena at saka ni Professor Ana Malindogoy, 2 linggo pala itong meeting na to, 2 malaking session, tapos lahat ng cabinet papalitan. Kasi bagong leader, bagong kabataan na leaders daw. Tapos ang focus daw, economic growth. Baka may tanong ka, anong
Sa China
epekto?
po yan.
Sa China.
Oo.
Ngayon nangyayari as we are having this Pandesal Forum, kasi sabi nila, ito ang number 2 pinakamalaking ekonomiya sa mundo. Ang Amerika, tagilid konti ang ekonomiya, recession daw, sabi nila. Europe talagang tagilid, Germany, UK. So pag-asa ng mundo daw, hindi pwedeng tumagilid ang China, kundi lahat tayo dadapa. So, yun ang pinapakinggan nitong dalawa. Tapos itong dalawang analyst natin, baka may tanong ka, curious ka, anong epekto sa Pilipinas?
Ayun,
Itong
actually,
two sessions.
hindi ko po alam kung napag-usapan na o natalakay na, kararating ko lang po, pasensya na po sa abala. Siguro,
Ay, okay lang.
tatanungin ko na lang ulit, siguro ano yung magiging indikasyon nito, ano yung magiging epekto nito sa Pilipinas. Alam niyo naman, maubo lang ang China, babahing na Pilipinas. Kumbaga parang ang tindi ng epekto, lalo na sa usapin na ekonomiya. Talagang halos lahat ng ginagamit natin, nakasandal tayo sa China, hanggang sa itong mic na hinahawakan ko, hanggang kay Boss Wilson.
Oo, lahat ng cellphone natin.
Oo.
Mga Oppo, mga Huawei, pati iPhone, lahat gawa doon.
Oo, lalo pat yung inflation natin, di ba? Usapin ng inflation, patuloy pa rin ito. Ano magiging indikasyon nito? Yung balasahan na to, yung magiging yung pag-iikot ng mga
Thank
positions
you.
sa China. Salamat po,
Thank you.
Doctor. Salamat po.
Anong epekto nito yung economy ng China at saka itong malaking meeting na to? Baka pwedeng managalog si Dr.
Sige po,
Ravena at saka kasi sikat yung radio station nila, DCBB sa Filipino language.
Sir, thank you po for your question. Actually, yun nga po yung nabanggit ko kanina. Since China po is the world's second largest economy, naramdaman po natin yung epekto nito no, nung nagkaroon sila ng pandemic, nagkaroon ng lockdown economy. But now na nag-reopen na po ulit sila, so baka maging brighter po yung prospects for us, for our industries, considering that they are our second largest trade partner. On the West Philippine Sea issue, sir, I think yun nga po makikita natin na kung yung balasahan po mangyayari or yung new appointments na mangyayari ay would lead to more continuity or more to slight changes. So we have yet to see that, sir, and maganda po na ma-monitor natin in the coming months ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Sa ekonomiya natin,
Saan nyo, mas magiging maganda ba yung
mas maganda ba ang epekto nitong pagbabago sa China na mas bata ang leader, tapos mas optimistic sila ngayon? Anong epekto sa economy natin daw? This 2023.
Well, yun po, sir, I think baka mag-resume, or I think nag-resume naman na po, but magkaroon ng follow-through yung Belt and Road Initiative po nila dito sa atin. So I think yung visit po ni PBBM already showed the prospects. So yun po, I think yung mga bagong tao nila, cabinet members will just follow through on that. But of course, this is contingent on a very important factor, sir, yung developments po sa West Philippine Sea.
Yun sinasabi niyo, Belt and Road, ibig sabihin ba posible dumami yung tulong ng China sa train, sa tulay, sa pagpatayo ng highway, ganyan ba yun?
That's possible po, sir.
Power plants.
But caveat, sir, kung depende po kasi yan kung ano ang basa rin nila sa foreign policy natin.
Kung friendly tayo sa kanila, kung
Opo.
di tayo nagkakaproblema sa kanila, lalakas yung tulong sa infrastructure.
Magandang gawin po natin yung barometer, sir. If
maganda.
tingin natin na nagsuslow down sila or nagbe-mellow down yung kanilang aid and investments, then
Yes.
that could mean that they're not happy with the situation.
With our foreign policy.
Opo.
Si Professor Ana, anong sakot niyo kay Luisito? Tungkol sa epekto sa economy ng Pilipinas, itong 2 sessions.
Opo. Opo. Maraming salamat po sa tanong. Since Tagalog po tayo. Tagalog po tayo. Ang isa sa mga importanteng na mangyayari dyan sa tinatawag nating 2 sessions, no, NPC, ay una-una talagang pag-uusapan dyan. Kasi yun nga right now, if you really look at China, yung pinaka-priority nila is yung economic side talaga ng kanilang bansa. Of course, the foreign policy is always important. Pero kumbaga, kung focus is how the country, paano yung country magre-recover from the COVID-19 pandemic na nangyayari. And of course, factor in mo dyan, yung kanilang focus din, how their economy will be able to sustain na it will not be affected dun sa trade war na mayroon and imposed on them by the United States. So yan talaga ay I expected ko na probably would be discussed more in that two sessions. So, and if you look at it, nag-announce nga sila na mayroon silang target na 5% growth, parang economic growth na they will work on ngayong year na to na ma-achieve nila. So, kung titignan mo, ang kasabi nga ni Jed, ang China is the second largest economy in the world. And among the developing countries, ito din ang pinaka malaking tawag nito, ekonomiya sa global south or what you call developing world, no? So, ang ekonomiya ng maraming bansa, including the Philippines, is very much connected or konektado yan sa China. Kasi if you look at China right now, siya ang pinakamalaking trading country in the world. Yun talaga yung totoo dyan. So kapag pinakamalaking trading country ka, and then like for example, ang Pilipinas, ang pinakamalaking trading partner natin is ang China, whatever happens in China affects us. Not only in terms of imports of goods, but export of goods as well. Kasi ang trade, aside from the balance and payment and all of these things, mainly yung import and export of goods yan in many ways So doon pa lang makikita natin na halimbawa ang China will grow, as in nagko-continue siya mag-grow economically speaking, then we benefit from it. Kasi ibig sabihin connected kasi at tied up ang ating ekonomiya sa China in many ways. So hindi natin we need to look at the rise of China as an economic powerhouse as positive for us. Though may caveat dyan. Yun yung sinasabi ni Jed. Ang caveat dyan is ganito. Our economic relationship with China ay apektado, magiging mas solid yan at mas malalim, and in a way we will benefit pagdating sa mga investments in terms of infrastructure. Hindi lang infrastructure infrastructure, technology, when you talk about information technology, they're very good at this. And they are a highly technological country this time around. And when you talk about agriculture, kasi ang agriculture natin dapat pagtuunan din natin ng pansin. Kasi medyo lacking tayo dyan medyo lagging tayo dyan So meron kang mga opportunity on this area. Now, habang lumalaki, ang China economically, given na connected ang ekonomiya mo, nagtitrickle down siya sa kanyang trading partner, lalo ng ASEAN, ang ASEAN member states. Kasi ASEAN member states are quite a priority of China. Kaya nga may tinaas na nga nila ang level of relationship, strategic na. At saka mayroon mga pinag-uusapan ngayon between China and ASEAN na very much on the economic front. So, ang sinasabi natin, we will benefit. Pero, yun ang caveat na sinasabi ni Jed kanina. Our economic relationship is very much tied to our political relationship. So kapag hindi ganon kaganda ang ating political relationship dahil sa foreign policy natin, na hindi siguro na medyo hindi siguro comfortable ang China sometimes or most of the time sa current government, apektado syempre ang ating economic relationship kasi magkakalibrate yan. That is a normal situation wherever you are in the world. Ganon talaga ang dynamics ng bansa to bansa and state to state. That's a realistic perspective. That's a realist perspective. So, ang sinasabi lang natin dito, we need to take a look at that dynamics na ang issue sa political side has to be managed very well para yung economic side natin maging okay at yung ating relationship at saka yung mga opportunities and benefits that we can get from the rise of China as an economic powerhouse, and it is still rising, we will benefit. Pero we need to manage that political relationship very well. And that is tied up to how we are, that is very much tied up kung paano gumagalaw at ano ang essence ng ating tinatawag na foreign policy. At nakakabit dyan ang issue ng West Philippine Sea or the disputed South China Sea. So meaning, kailangan natin ayusin at properly handle the West Philippine Sea issue na, alam mo yun, it will not escalate into something else. So, ganon ang dynamics dyan And that is a very normal dynamics wherever you are in the world. Ganon talaga yan. Kahit saang parte ng mundo ka, ang economic relationship ng isang bansa sa another bansa is also very much dependent on the political relationship of the two countries. So hindi yan as if like abnormal. No, it's not. That's really how countries conduct their relationship internationally. So ganun siya. So sana makita natin to at tingnan natin din na ano pa yung mga kalalabasan ng two sessions na to sa economic front especially and most especially din sa foreign policy ng China para maintindihan natin paano sila gumagalaw sa country and probably we can calibrate how we gonna deal with them as well. So yun ang tingin ko, no? Thank you.
Thank you. Ang galing ng sagot ng dalawang analyst natin, Luisito. Ang sagot nilang dalawa, Mr. Luisito, na maraming pagkakataon, maraming opportunities for the Philippine economy to benefit. Kasi yung number 2 economy in the world is reviving itself, naging dynamic. Pero depende daw, sabi nilang dalawa, sa political relationship natin with them, kung komportable ba ang China o hindi sa foreign policy natin. Kaya yun may pagkaka-disagreement natin sa West Philippine Sea. Sana i-manage daw ng maayos na hindi mag-escalate into something bad daw. Tapos may comment din dito si Attorney Tiboy Reyes. Sabi niya, the two sessions of China is focused on the economy daw, while our Congress daw is focused on politics yata. And ano sabi niya? Attorney Tiboy Reyes, thank you. Baka may tanong si Mr. Val Gonzales, yung napakagaling na journalist from DCRH, nandito, nakita ko siya. Si Mr. Val Gonzales.
Noon po, good
Ang
morning
ganda
po.
ng boses.
Good morning
Pag
po.
nagsasalita, parang kulang na lang
Thank you.
mag-concert.
Thank you, Dr. Ravena. Thank you, Sir Wilson. Nung isang araw po kasi may pahayag si Senador Amy Marcos sa Senado. Ang sabi niya, bakit kakalatan natin ng additional venue para sa EDCA ang Northern Luzon? Parang sumasali lamang tayo dyan, nag-escalate lang tayo at nagpupustura lang tayo na tayo ilalaban sa China. Anong tingin po ninyo rito?
Very interesting question by Mr. Val Gonzales of DCRH. Anong reaction niyo sa mga tanong ni Senator Amy sa nung March 1 Senate public hearing? Sabi niya, bakit puro EDCA dito, hindi economy ang pinag-usapan? Tapos tinanong pa ni Senator Amy, bakit yung 4 na American bases na pang-protection daw sa Pilipinas, nakasiksik lahat sa Northern Luzon na wala naman tayong disputed island issue doon. Taiwan lang ang nandun nakaharap. Ang problema ng Pilipinas nasa Western Philippines. Anong reaction ninyong dalawa daw? Yes, Dr. Ravena and Professor Ana Malindog-Uy. Anong reaction nyo kay Senator Amy Marcos tanong niya?
Sir, thank you po for your question. Actually, yun nga po sir, mapapansin nyo na si Senator Amy Marcos, parang binabalanse niya po yung kanyang kapatid, no? Yung policy ng kanyang kapatid. Kasi bukod po dun sa EDCA, sa pag-question niya sa EDCA expansion, pati po yung location ng Balikatan for the first time ay magaganap po sa Ilocos Norte. And so bukod po na border din naman po yung Ilocos sa South China Sea, pero malapit din po siya sa Taiwan, no? Kaya po sinasabi ngayon, meron po mga reports ngayon na will we respond din po ba sa Taiwan contingency? Kasi alay po tayo ng US. Kasi meron po tayong mutual defense treaty with the Americans. Kunyari po kasi kapag yun po ang analogy ng isang alliance. Kumbaga parang itrato niyo po siya na isang gang war o frat war. Pag kunyari po yung kabrad mo, 'di ba, na hit, re-rest back ka po. Kapag ikaw naman po ang na-hit, siya naman po ang re-rest back din sa'yo. So ganun din po siguro sa Taiwan, since may alitan po between the US and China over Taiwan, the Americans expect us to provide aid and help them. Tapos kapag dating naman po sa West Philippine Sea, kapag tayo po ay may alitan with China, sila po ay tutulong din sa atin. Yun nga po yung issue dito, sir, no? Kasi baka pwede po sabihin ng Amerikano na tutulungan namin kayo sa West Philippine Sea, pero tulungan nyo kami sa Taiwan. Kasi pag hindi nyo kami tinulungan sa Taiwan, baka double standards yung alliance. Yun po, sir.
Professor Ana, thank you, Dr. Jed Ravena. Professor Ana, Malindog, uy, ano daw ang reaction niyo kay Senator Amy Marcos sa Senate hearing niya nung March 1? Question from Mr. Bal Gonzalez of DCRH nandito sa Kamuning Bakery Cafe.
Oo, thank you po sa tanong. Um, Actually, nag-agree ako sa question. Parang ganun din ang tanong ko eh. Bakit nga ba? I mean, EDCA is actually may kadagdag ako na tanong doon sa tanong ni Senator Amy Marcos. What's the point of expanding EDCA? And what's the point of adding more military bases or EDCA bases in the Philippines or EDCA sites? They say it EDCA sites, but actually it's EDCA bases. So what are the rationale behind this? Kasi ang sinasabi din ng karamihan or ng nagsusulong sa usaping EDCA at expansion, full implementation, and additional for EDCA bases is ano daw to? Nakakaloka nga eh. Naluloka ko actually. I'll be very straightforward. No? First is parang climate change. Parang disaster preparedness, disaster relief, operation, blah, blah, blah. The other one is economic development. And the other one na justify nila is protection or security, something, something. Kasi ang EDCA, it's not just about installation of military infrastructure to certain extent. Doon, ang sinasabi naman ng United States, these are not permanent. Kasi hindi daw yan permanent. So, kasi nga, mayroon tayong hindi sa konstitusyon, at saka yung experience natin dito sa mga US military bases, di ba, napatalsik na nga sila before. So ngayon, ang sinasabi, hindi siya permanent. Tapos deployment of troops, ang sinasabi din na rotating troops, US troops. And the other one is prepositioning of military assets. So itong mga to, tapos itong additional na expanded EDCA will be placed in certain areas na minsan magtatanong ka, like for example, on the north, Cagayan, wala naman conflict ang China at saka or wala naman tayong anything na reasons bakit mo ilalagay ang EDCA base doon. 'Di ba? Parang kung near the South China Sea, kaya pa nilang i-justify yan kasi may dispute daw sa South China Sea. Pero sa North, parang ano yung rationale? So yun nga ang sinasabi na economic development, climate change, disaster, something like that. Pero ang usapin kasi na yan is, ang tanong kasi dyan, why nga? Well, unang-una, the North is very much near the Taiwan. And we know naman the dynamics of the US and China when you talk about Taiwan. It's a very critical issue na dapat pag-isipang mabuti ng gobyerno. Kasi sa atin, sa side natin, malinaw naman siguro, at sinabi din naman, I think, ni President Marcos during his visit to China last January, when he was facing the President of China, President Xi, na he respects and he upholds the One China policy. The One China policy basically states, yung pinaka-core essence niyan, is Taiwan is not a state or a country. It is a province of China, though they have their own internal dynamics. So thus far, it is an internal issue, an internal dynamics between the two, no, Taiwan, China, and China. So ibig sabihin, domestic affair yan. So in international relation, one basic rule and one thing that we need to remember is what you call non-interference in the internal affairs or domestic affair of a country. So ganun talaga ang dyan, ang sitwasyon. So ngayon, pumapasok, yung EDCA na yan is ilalagay mo doon facing Taiwan. So ang tanong niyan, ano ang magiging feeling naman nitong China? Pero ang justify nila, you have nga the MDT, sabi ni Jed, so may ganung dynamic. So if in any case magkaroon ng problema ang US at China over Taiwan, ang tanong, sasali ba tayo dyan? Now, kung ang ng gobyerno ay sumali, yan na dyan yung EDCA basis mo. Now, kung hindi, ang tanong, why do you have to have that EDCA basis? Is it for climate change? Hindi na ba kaya ng Pilipinas ang climate change? Ang mga disaster preparedness and response to disaster? Yun nga sinasabi ni Government ng Tumamba. Parang di naman kailangan, especially yung troops, kasi kaya namang mag-respond sa mga disaster na ng relief or operation ng ating sariling troops, di ba? So may mga ganong dynamics ka na at the moment, iniisip natin, like me, ina-analyze ko, ano ba talaga? Parang may something may smoke screen ka eh. So yun. Pero we need to be very careful about these things kasi from my, well, the way I see it, the Taiwan Strait issue is a red light. It's really a red flag for China. It's a sensitive one. And I think if we really want to, we are saying that we respect the One China policy as a country, then probably we should be more true to it. And let's not provoke our neighbor by putting some kind of, EDCA in there. Kasi magkikreate tayo ng problema dyan eh. So I agree with Senator Amy in every sense. Yung mga tanong niya, actually I agree at may mga dagdag tanong pa nga ako. Pero yun yung dynamics na I don't know, pero I really hope, I really hope, sincerely hope that the current government will think through, be more prudent, and would analyze further. And good that the Senator Marcos is trying to balance things out when you talk about narrative. Pero at the end of the day kasi, the decision making is in the hands of the president. So nasa kanya yun. So pero maganda na rin yun na napapag-usapan to in public at sa Senate. Kasi it means nagkakaroon ka ng space para makita ng tao at probably ni President Marcos yung different angles and different things na dapat tignan at pag-isipang mabuti. So ganon ang tingin ko dyan eh. Thank you.
Thank you very much sa analysis ni Professor Ana Malindog-Uy and Dr. Aaron Jed Ravena. Mr. Gonzales, baka may follow-up question ka. Maganda yung tanong mo. Maganda.
Sabi lang ho na
Yes.
hindi kailangang sumunod sa, parang sinasabi ho ninyo na hindi kailangang sumunod sa kagustuhan ng Amerika, although merong existing na agreement sa ilalim ng EDCA. Tama ho
Yan.
ba yun?
Philippine national interest daw
Opo,
ang-
sir. By virtue po of the yung mutual defense treaty natin with the US, kapag ka nagkaputukan po, we are expected po, we are obliged po to help them, we are obliged po to respond. Kasi ganun din po sa atin, pag tayo po ay nasabak din sa putukan, sila din po ay obliged to respond and assist.
So ayaw at sa gusto natin kapag naglaban, nagkaputukan itong Taiwan at ang China, madadamay tayo.
Kapag ka nasangkot din po sir yung mga Amerikano. Pero ito po sir, something interesting na dapat po nating inote, na meron pong provision sa ating constitution na yung president po has the power to declare a state of war and any other national emergency. And kapag ka may ganong conditions lang po siya, pwedeng pumayag na magpadala ng tropa or magbigay ng support. So I think dapat po na pag-uusapan na rin to ng Congress ngayon kasi sila rin po ay variable kapag ka nagkaroon ng gera. Kumbaga hindi po absolute yung executive power in this regard. So yung legislative power, yung congressional power, sila rin po ay dapat na pag-usapan din po nila kung ano po ba ang dapat gawin ng Pilipinas kapag kami gera po. Kasi nandun po yun sa constitution natin na meron din po silang power to intervene. Congressional intervention, sir.
Kung sinasabi ninyo, Dr. Jed Ravena, kung magkagera sa Taiwan na hindi tayo kasama, pero ang Amerika at China, kung magkagera dyan, kailangan, may right pala ang Kongreso i-question kung oo hindi ang Pilipinas,
Kasi,
ang
sir,
presidente.
May clause po kasi, sir, sa Mutual Defense Treaty, nakalagay doon na in accordance with each country's own quote-unquote constitutional processes. And nasa constitutional process po natin, yung ganong klase ng emergency, wars, may say po yung Congress.
So maganda yung suggestion ninyo ngayon na paulit-ulit pinag-uusapan sa Amerika ngayon yung posibleng gera sa Taiwan, tapos may mutual defense treaty tayo, dapat Kongreso natin pinagdedebate na ngayon yan.
Maganda po, pinag-uusapan na rin po
Oo,
nila.
hindi pwedeng automatic parang bulag-bulagan lang diretso tayo sa gera na hindi natin gera.
Opo. Although yung kinds of assistance, iba-ibang degrees po yan, sir. Pwede pong ipagamit lang natin yung mga lupa natin, yung mga base natin sa Amerikano. Pwede rin pong magpadala tayo ng tropa mismo. So iba-iba po yung klase ng support.
Ay, may tanong sa tanong niya, kung pinagamit natin ang base natin sa Amerika, hindi tayo nagpadala ng sundalo, pwede ba yung kalaban ng Amerika i-target yung mga yan? Kasi ginagamit, kunyari may bases tayo, ginagamit ng Amerika para aeroplano nila ibomba yung Taiwan or yung China. Pwede ba sila i-target, pwede ba nila i-target naman tayo? Yung mga base natin.
That's possible po, sir. Opo.
And logical.
Opo.
Kasi bago ka i-target doon, ita-target na muna kita.
Yes, as long as parang it facilitates or...
Kaya peligro yun. May
kasi-
follow-up si Mr. Gonzales.
Kasi parang ang gusto ng Amerika, inihahanda na tayo na gustuin man natin hindi. Dahil may existing tayong agreement sa ilalim ng EDCA, gagamitin nila ang pasilidad natin, ang lupa natin. Dahil tayo yung strategic na lugar para sila ay
Kira.
makapag-launch ng kanilang pwersa laban sa China.
Tama
dahil,
si Mr.
dahil ang
Gonzales.
Taiwan naman, alam naman natin na
Oo.
ito'y sinusuportahan ng Amerika. Pero ang
Yes.
next question ko, Professor,
Yes, Professor.
ang next question
Dalawang
ko, Professor,
professor.
kakayanin ba ng ating bansa na sumausaw pa dyan sa issue na yan? Ang dami na nating problema rito
Sa
internally.
sibuyas, saka sa ibang bagay.
O dapat ngayon pa
Pagpasali.
lamang. Oo nga, o dapat ngayon pa lamang ay linawin na ng ating bansa na hindi tayo makikialam dyan dahil sa tingin ng China, probinsya lang niya si Taiwan. Huwag na tayong
Yes.
makialam sa internal na problema nila.
Maganda. Anong reaction ni Dr. Jed Rabena at saka Professor Ana dyan sa tanong ni Mr.
Actually, sir,
Gonzales?
ngayon po kasi parang naghahalo na po yung mga security issues Yung South China Sea, West Philippine Sea, nagsasabay na po siya sa Taiwan issue So parang nagkakaroon na po ng mix-up kung yung the strengthening of our alliance with the US, yung pag-upgrade po ng military bases natin, is directed po ba for the South China Sea contingency or sa Taiwan? So medyo naghahalo na po, sir, no? So para hindi rin po siya maghalo, magandang yun po, we communicate din po with the Chinese. And maganda rin po na mapakinggan din po nila tayo na meron po certain actions na hindi rin po natin nagugustuhan. And dapat po, ibalansihin po natin talaga yung relationship natin with the great powers kasi ayaw din po nating maipit. So ito po, yung dispute po natin with China, that is one thing. Yung dispute po between the US and China is another thing. Pero minsan po naghahalo yung mga yan So it's a tough task po no sa ating foreign policy which clearly demands us to talagang to be assertive and at the same time constructive.
May tanong naman ako, kasi sabi ng Mutual Defense Treaty, sabi ninyo na kailangan tumulong ang Amerika sa atin kung may problema tayo. Pero sabi ni President Obama noon, yung mga disputed island na yan, hindi kasama daw sa Mutual Defense Treaty, sabi niya. Tapos, sabi ni dating Pangulong Duterte, question niya yung US Ambassador Goldberg, bakit doon na may problema tayo sa Scarborough Shoal, bakit hindi sila tumulong sa atin noon? Di ba question yon? Parang anong sagot ni Professor Ana Malindog o ito? Or may follow-up pa siguro si Mr. Gonzales.
Ang ganda ng tanong ni nung ating kaibigan na taga-media, no?
Si Mr.
At saka
Gonzales.
sinasabi nga niya, kung ganyan ang mga risk, na if those are the kind of risks that we have to face, then probably the best thing to do, sinasabi niya, is huwag na tayong sumausaw kasi para maiwasan natin yung risk. No? Yun yung, well, the same din naman ang tingin ko kung sobrang mataas ang risk and you sacrifice your relationship with another major power at nasa tabi lang natin kasi neighbor natin ang China. So probably, if the risk is more compared to the benefits sa mga ganitong usapin ng EDCA, hindi lang EDCA yan kasi nagsasabay-sabay ngayon hindi lang sabay-sabay it's two front. If you really look at it in a military perspective, two front yan You have this and the Taiwan contingency or what you call Taiwan Strait issue. You have the South China Sea. Dalawa yan na makikita mong nagsasabay. Ang intensification, ang Pilipinas ay nasa gitna. Lahat yan, flashpoint. Flashpoint yung dalawang yan. Any miscalculation in there will result into a military conflict. Ang tanong, in a war ba, may rules pa ba na gumagana? There's no such thing. Rules and laws doesn't matter anymore at war. What matters in war is rules and the rules of war. Yun eh. Kasi ano na yan, iba na ang if a country is at war na eh. Yun ang dapat natin, the country will be under martial law. It is really, that's the reality if you put it in a scenario building. Kaya nga sinasabi natin, ngayon pa lang, dapat mapag-usapan ng mabuti yan, maging prudent ang gobyerno, at ng mas malalim na analysis at paghimay-himay ng issues. Kasi mahirap na kung nandun ka na sa binyet, no? Mabuti ngayon, medyo mayroon ka pang space to recalibrate kung paano tayo puposisyon sa mga ganitong usapin. Take a look at that, no? Iba pa yung usapin with the United States when you talk about the EDCA bases and the expansion of EDCA. Na nandito din ang United States pumapasok sa issue ng disputed South China Sea because right now, United States with its allies, including us, of course, the MDT, they're having this joint patrol in the South China Sea that would be participated, I think, by Australia. They're drafting the rules according to EFA, they're drafting the rules. You have their job.
Thank you.
The Philippines, and they will have this joint patrol in the South China Sea, disputed South China Sea.
Signal. Nawala yung sound.
About all of these things. So ano din ang magiging action ng China? These are things happening at the same time, both at the same time. And then you have the military agreements that is being cooked with Japan, with the Australia, and United States. We have the expansion of EDCA. And violence of this thing in April. So, maraming nangyayari sa bansa. Ang tanong kasi dito, how Filipinos will make sense out of all of these things? And yung mga ating mga leaders, paano nila titignan
Nasaan ang sound?
Is it ba talaga, ang ka ba talaga patungo when you talk about your foreign policy? Kasi if you look at ang foreign policy, karamihan ng ASEAN country, independent foreign policy. They try to make, parang may distansya eh. Dalawa yung malalaking power, that's China, pero sila, they're trying to have that
Yung sound.
Pero tayo, ang napapansin ko lang,
Yung sound.
halo-halo na, jumble-jumble na, lahat ito may risk. All of this has risk, economically, geopolitically, especially economically, when you talk about China. So, ang tanong kasi dito, ano bang gagawin ng Pilipinas? Saan ba talaga itong South China Sea mahirap, hindi ko sinasabi.
Naririnig ba dyan? Sa Zoom?
Nag-message na po.
Madali, pero mahirap talaga. And if they really reflect, really to prove in decisions, one foot on our side, it will cost us a lot. Tuyo ko na, pero for me, I'll just make it a categorical, categorical stand, no? I am not in favor of EDCA or the expansion of EDCA. Really, I'm not. Like, especially the additional, how do you call that? Additional bases, EDCA bases na nakaposisyon at and also, yung question
Oy.
kanina, halimbawa, nagkaroon ng
Yes.
something dyan sa Taiwan Strait. Given my basis ka, sabihin mo, pag hindi tayo sasaw sa physically or in whatever way, pag ginamit yan, then saan tayo, either for refueling of their American assets or parang depository ng military assets nila. And then damay ka eh. So kapag damay ka, one of the targets ka din.
Thank
Ganun
you.
siya eh. It's not as simple as black. It's not really simple matter, no? These are really adults na dapat nag-iisipan talaga na mabuti. So yun eh.
Thank you.
Hindi siya ganun well, mahirap
Thank you
siya.
very much.
Pero dapat, it's a challenge for the current government.
Thank
You
you.
know, they need to think through.
Thank you
Wag
very
yung
much.
padalos-dalos sa madesisyon. Kasi kawawa naman ang Pilipinas at ang Pilipino. Ang daming problema economical,
Thank you very much. Maganda yung mga analysis.
FB page, asset, FB
Thank you.
is an airport active. Like, wow, ang daming issue, sabi ko na domestic. Na
Thank you.
para bang, dapat pagtuunan.
Thank you very much.
Natin din kasi issues it's very near to the stomach of the
Thank you.
Filipino people, 'di ba? Parang ganun
Thank you,
ang
Professor.
sitwasyon eh. So medyo mahirap ang usapin
Yes. Thank you. Baka may follow-up
in
si
geopolitics.
Val
Ang
Gonzalez.
government at nga hindi palagay sa alanganin. Yun yung importante doon.
Thank you. Oh, kamusta naman ang sagot nilang dalawa? At least nalinawan naman yun.
We will not be
May follow-up si Mr. Pal. Baka may follow-up si Mr. Gonzalez. Oh, may follow-up question si Mr. Gonzalez.
Oh, Prof, nung papaalis si dating Pangulong Noynoy Aquino sa pwesto, mataas ang tensyon sa West Philippine Sea. Kasi ang dating Pangulong Noynoy nun ay ang kanyang posisyon ay medyo dikit sa US. Kaya mataas ang tensyon. Now, pagpasok ng Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, medyo bumaba ang tensyon kasi nga ang pagkiling ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte ay wala sa Amerika kundi nasa China. Kaya ang ginawa ng China, nanligaw sa ating bansa. Dahil ang paninindigan noon ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, ibasura na yung EDCA na yan, ibasura na yung ilang dekada ng agreement natin with America. Puro naman panloloko lang din at panlalamang ang ginagawa sa atin. Sa palagay ba ninyo, with this rising tension na naman dyan sa West Philippine Sea, dahil nga sabi ninyo, napakakomplikado eh. May away itong si China with tinuturing niyang probinsya lang niya na Taiwan, na ang Taiwan ay suportado ng Amerika, kaya tayo'y nadadamay dahil bumalik na naman tayo sa posisyon natin na ibinalik na naman itong EDCA, kaya nandyan na naman ngayon yung tension. Anong analysis ninyo dito?
Well, actually, ito nga po sir, yung magandang ngayon, no, kung makikita natin paano po babalansehin ni Pangulong Marcos yung ating relations with the US and China. Pwede pong maaring pagkatapos po ng EDCA, mag-welcome po siya ng kunyari, more Chinese investments. Mag-express po siya ng willingness to engage more with China, like yung kanilang Belt and Road Initiative, attend the Belt and Road Forum and other Chinese-led events and activities. So ito po yung magandang signaling na pwede niyang gawin na hindi lang tungkol sa security, na hindi lang po tungkol sa West Philippine Sea, yung issue natin with China, na para hindi po makita na puro security po, puro yung relations with the US ang kanyang pinapahalagahan. So maganda pong mag-engage ulit yung ating mga high-level officials with their Chinese counterparts at mag-express po ng willingness na magtuloy-tuloy po yung mga economic agenda natin, mga developmental efforts. Yeah.
Thank you. May report tayo from Beijing pala. Yung reporter na si Mr. Editor pala siya, Editor Mr. Wesley Chua galing sa Manila. Sabi niya, yung nangyayari right now daw, i-share niya sa atin, may 2,948 delegates ng National People's Congress. Habang nag-forum tayo dito, Pandesal Forum, sila naman doon, nakikinig sa mga report ng mga leader nila, nagmi-meeting doon. Si Premier Lee Keqiang na paalis na, gumawa ng last report as Premier ngayong araw. Ngayong araw pala, kasi para retire na si Premier Li Keqiang, may bagong Premier na mas bata. Ang report daw ni Premier Li ng China, puro daw tungkol sa economic reforms na ginawa ng gobyerno ng China na itutuloy, tapos tungkol sa economic recovery, saka economic stability. Yun ang priority daw. Tapos rineport din yung mga ginagawa ng gobyerno ng China at saka plano tungkol sa environmental protection. This is now the first National People's Congress pagkatapos ng pandemya. Ang sabi, dalawa daw ang reporter sa Philippine media andun ngayon sa Beijing. Baka next time yung mga taga dito sa Pandesal Forum pwede pumunta doon. Ang report pa ni Premier Lee daw, ang GDP, Gross Domestic Product ng China daw, nadagdagan ng 5.2% nung nakaraan 5 taon or additional of 121 trillion yuan, which is an average of 5.2% annual growth in the past 5 years. Ang agrikultura daw ng China, nag-stabilize daw ang production nila. Last year daw, 1.3 trillion gin. Ano ba yung gin? Basta may measure. Tapos, every year daw, ang nadagdagan na trabaho daw sa China, 12.7 million jobs in the urban areas. Tapos sabi daw, in the last 8 years na mga reforma ng gobyerno ng China daw, 100 million na mga tao daw sa probinsya nila, sa rural area nila, naahon nila sa kahirapan. They lifted nearly 100 million rural residents lifted out of rural poverty in the past 5 years. This is the report of the outgoing China Premier of their performance in the last 5 years. Tama pala si Dr. Jedra Bena and Professor Ana Malindog Uy. Ito pala, pagpapalit ng gobyerno for the next 5 years naman. So nagre-report pala ngayon habang nagkikwentuhan tayo dito. Isa pa, sabi ni Attorney T-Boy Reyes na nakikinig via Zoom, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia, our Philippine neighbors, also have territorial claims over the West Philippine Sea. It's not only China and Taiwan. But none of these countries daw, not Vietnam, not Malaysia, not Brunei, not Indonesia, none of them are begging for U.S. military bases. Sabi niya, how come daw Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia also have conflicting or overlapping claims with China and Taiwan in the place we call West Philippine Sea, but none of these countries, not a single one, begging or allowing U.S. military bases in their country daw. Yun ang tanong ni Attorney T-Boy Reyes, Ateneo graduate. First time ko narinig to. Comment from the two analysts. About the economy muna, and comment ni Attorney T-Boy Reyes, tanong niya. About the economy of China in the past 5 years.
May Digot to enter the Zoom to give us update daw.
Yes. Nandiyan na ba siya? Pwede natin ipaano sa Zoom?
I-allow mo daw si Miss Agot to
Yes.
enter the Zoom.
Filipina journalist, ipasok mo nga sa Zoom. Hindi niya ina-allow sa Zoom. Paki-allow niya sa Zoom para mag-report siya.
To enter Zoom,
Ano nangyayari ngayon?
she can report.
Nasa
what is
Beijing
going
siya
on
ngayon.
Also in Beijing, since she is one of the two correspondents
from the Philippine
si Wesley
media.
Kasi nagbigay na sa'yo ng update. Si Miss Agot ata is magbigay, mag-enter sa Zoom. Check mo kaya, baka siya, waiting area. Naka-wait siya.
Hindi siya nakapasok. Wala siya. Pwede paki-share yung Zoom ID sa kanya. Sinare ko kanina sa Viber baka paki-share naman Professor Ana Alindogoy. So, Dr. Rabena, anong comment niyo about the economy of China? In the past 5 years, 100 million daw inahon nila sa kahirapan. So ang itong report na pala ng Premier na to, buong umaga tungkol sa ekonomiya nila. So magandang balita sa ekonomiya natin. Tama sinabi nyo, kung maayos ang political and diplomatic relations natin with China. Maganda yung sinabi ninyong dalawa. Yes. Any comments?
Sir, I think yung ano naman po, yung the betterment of our relationship, I guess it's for any bilateral relationship, two-way street naman po yan, sir, no? Kumbaga, hindi lang naman po dapat tayo yung tumatrabaho niyan, dapat po yung China rin, for their part, tinatrabaho din po ito. So, mutual po talaga, mutual effort. And kasi gano'n naman po yung ibang bilateral relationships. And what was the question, sir, sa economy?
Yun, economy, ang nakatutok pala sa ekonomiya ng China, itong Congress nila ngayon. So, parang very optimistic sila na tutuloy ang economic reforms.
Kagaya po nung nabanggit ko kanina, sir, no, nasa post-pandemic economy na po sila kasi nag-open up na po uli sila. So, I think mas magiging brighter po yung prospects for their economy. And yun po, sir. Yeah, yung nabanggit ko po kanina.
Thank you. Baka may tanong pa kayo dyan. Yung mga journalist natin dito will soon have lunch na. Baka may a few last questions. Professor Ana, may reaction ka? Or si Dr. Rabena, bakit daw ang mga neighbors natin, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, none of them daw, apat na bansa yata, pati Brunei, none of them asking for U.S. military bases or allowing in the Philippines, sabi ni Attorney T. Boy Reyes, watching via Zoom. Kung pwede short answer para we could have additional questions. Yes. Andyan na ba?
Should I...
Si Professor, si
Okay.
Dr. Yes.
Wilson, example lang dun sa isang country na nabanggit ay si Vietnam, no?
Yes,
If
Vietnam.
you look at Vietnam, may tatlong very important policy sila na sinusunod when you talk
Yes.
about
Ano yung
these things
tatlong
sa mga
policy?
military deployment of military troops and all. Like for example, Vietnam, no? Sa Vietnam, malinaw sa kanila na they will not allow military troops, military bases in their own soil. Talagang ganun ang kanilang nasa pinaka-importanting policy nila, and I think it's also an independent foreign policy na pinupursue nila. The same with Indonesia actually had a discussion with an Indonesian or geopolitics expert. So academic din na nagtuturo sa University of Indonesia. So I was having a policy in relation to the South China Sea, in relation to ASEAN, at in relation even yung relationship ng ASEAN countries vis-a-vis China. Ang tinanong ko nga siya, sabi ko, ano ba ang foreign relation, ang direction at ano ba talaga ang core foreign policy ng Indonesia? Sabi nila, even before pa, especially after sa decolonization process ng Indonesia and even yung mga events na nangyari sa Indonesia, malinaw sa Indonesia as a country na they will have that distance between any major powers. In distance, especially now, if you look at major powers, si China and United States, and they will always they will stick to what you call independent foreign policy. Now, babalansehin nila ang kanilang relationship. And sabi ng kaibigan yung professor na kausap ko, Professor Etriani, sabi niya, and as much as possible, Indonesia will not take a side. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya pipili ng side between China and the United States, but will have a balanced relationship and will pursue an independent foreign policy and will relate to the two countries equally. Kaya nga kasi tinanong ko siya, ngayon ang Indonesia kasi, they will forge a joint patrol, I think, or will have a close relationship with the Chinese Coast Guard and even the Indonesian Coast Guard. Tinanong ko siya, is it a pragmatic approach for Indonesia? Sabi niya, yes, it is pragmatic. Sabi niya sa akin kasi, sabi niya, hindi lang naman with China kami may joint close relationship when you talk about the Coast Guard. at joint patrol. Even with other third countries outside of the region like United States, Australia, meron din sila. Kasi nga kami, sabi niya, binabalanse namin talaga yung relationship with
Thank
the
you.
United States and China and major powers. Kaya ngayon, if you really look at Indonesia, meron silang ngayon na they have that joint patrol and close relationship and open relationship. I mean, in terms of coordination, I think, and communication with the Chinese Coast Guard. Though,
Thank
if you
you.
really look at Indonesia, mayroon din silang mga conflict of interest, especially sa Natuna Islands, Natula Island, when you talk about China, no? Pero nakikita mo, they're really trying their best to have a good relation with both countries, pero
Thank
hindi
you.
sila controlled because they have their own independent foreign policy and they are not under the dictates of power for that matter. So it was good conversation that I had with an Indonesian expert when you talk about foreign policy and geopolitics, and that was last Friday. So sabi ko, okay, sabi ko, ang galing, very interesting, and I've learned a lot, sabi ko nga sa kanila, when it comes
Thank
to the Indonesian foreign policy. So looking at Indonesia and Vietnam, ganun ang ano nila eh, very strict din sila dun sa kanilang mga principles na tinatayuan. Ang Pilipinas naman, if you look at the Philippines Constitution, embedded naman talaga sa natin. At na
Thank you. Thank you.
the Philippines should pursue an independent foreign policy. The Philippines should not allow troops or military bases sa Pilipinas.
Thank
Ang
you
kaso
very
lang,
much.
ang problema lang siguro sa atin,
Thank you.
we tried, parating ginagawa ng ano eh, alam mo, naghahanap ng butas lagi to justify everything. Ganun tayo eh. Pero sa kanila kasi walang ganon. Kung ganito yung yung policy, ganito yung policy. Wala nang ano yan, gray
you.
areas yan. Ito talaga
Thank
ang
you.
kanilang policy. And they will pursue. Sa atin kasi, ang nangyayari pag may proposal, alam mong hindi, in spirit and in principle, hindi dapat. Hahanapan mo ng
Pinapalusot.
possible butas. Like for example, deployment of troops. Hindi naman kasi siya permanent eh, rotating eh. EDCA bases, hindi naman kasi permanent structure yan. So it's not really considered as,
Thank you very much.
a permanent military base of a country. Okay, so, pero sa ibang country kasi, walang very ano sila eh, ito yun, ganun sila eh. I had
Thank
some
you.
conversation with some academics coming from ASEAN level. So nakakatuwa, well, it inspiring din na marinig sila di ba, silang gawing learning lessons, and probably we can learn lessons from them as well. Kasi ASEAN countries yan eh. And they're
Thank you very
facing
much.
the same dynamics na meron tayo. But
Th-
very clear ang position. They will not take a side between China and
Balance,
the US, but
no
they will
sides.
pursue an independent foreign policy balancing act, maintaining peace and stability in the ASEAN region. So yun eh.
Thank you very much, Professor Ana Malindog-Uy, for citing Indonesia and Vietnam, and also to Dr. Jed Rabena. May short comment dito from Beijing, from Philippine journalist, si Miss Lisa Agot, nandun ngayon, watching live in Beijing. Sabi ni Miss Lisa Agot, I think taga PTV4 siya, sabi niya, here watching the 2 sessions of the National People's Congress, sabi ni Lisa Agot na, ang impression niya, everybody, yung 3,000 government official, everybody follows the rules. All in attendance, including President Xi Jinping, using an ID, even if everybody already knows him, which for me is a show of equality and discipline among the leaders of China. The representatives, the deputy representatives, yung mga legislators from all sectors, yung sinabi ni Dr. Rabena at saka ni Professor Ana kanina, from all sectors, allowing all sectors of China society to be heard. Also, the sessions had prioritization of the environment, which is laudable considering it has global effect. These are her impressions of the National People's Congress right now. 2 sessions happening in China. Ito pala, announcing of the, tama kayo, this is like the state of the nation plus more. Changing of the leaders, announcing of what's happening in the 5 years in the past, and new plans and targets for the coming future. Kaya pala interesting. Do you have any one or two more last questions before we go to lunch? We have special lunch kasi it's Sunday. Kaya special lunch ha, Miss Rose, Joanne, and James and Kim. Prepare nyo kami ng special lunch ha. Any one or two last questions from the Zoom guests or from the media? Any last question maybe from Bal, Luisito, or Nilo, or anyone? Maybe one last question. Ang last question dito, can you please summarize na lang your hopes for these two sessions? Short lang, summary, and your closing statement about the two sessions of China, the new set of leaders coming in, and what we should be doing to benefit from this in the Philippines. Siyempre, di ba, priority natin always is Philippine national interest and the welfare of Asia. Professor Jed, and then si Professor Dr. Jed Ravena.
Yeah. Okay, Sir Wilson. Yung sa akin po, sir, I guess maybe sa two sessions magandang tignan din po natin yung kung ano po yung pwede nating magaya sa China, especially dun po sa kanilang anti-poverty strategy or campaign. Kasi mostly nakikita, naririnig lang po natin yung usapin ng West Philippine Sea. So maganda rin po matuto tayo sa ginagawa ng China. And ito po kasi sir, yung two sessions, parang twin engines po to ng kanilang political system eh. So yung CPPC, nagbibigay nga po siya ng inputs dun sa NPC. And this will spell their trajectory for the next year and the next 5 years. So yun lang po sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jed Ravena. Professor Ana Malindugoy, can you summarize your views, your impressions, reactions on the two sessions and its effects on the Philippines and Asia, and your hopes?
Oo, dagdagan ko na rin ang sabi ni Jed. Again, yung two sessions, the name of the two sessions comes from the coinciding meeting of China's two main deliberate bodies na very important, sabi nga ni Jed, the National People's Congress and the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. So again, ang pag-uusapan dyan is, I think priority nga nila yung economics. So marami tayong tingnan natin at monitor natin kung ano ba ang magiging mga domestic and trade policies ng China when you talk about economics, kasi in the next 2 weeks makikita natin yan kasi may closing ceremony naman sila, closing. So mag-a-announce yan definitely kung ano yung mga priority areas. And then siguro maganda rin i-monitor natin yung kanilang magiging foreign policy agenda in the next 5 years at economics in the next 5 years. At tingnan natin kung sino ang mga bagong uupo ng mga officials ng China, at tignan natin yung background, kasi the background of these officials will tell you kung anong magiging priority din ng bawat officials at ng buong Chinese government when it comes. Kasi alam mo, sa China, ang mga umuupo sa matataas na posisyon, most of them are scientists din. May mga scientists din, iba-ibang field, may social science and natural science. Kikita mo yan. So if we want to look at how paano ba to gagalaw ng mga officials nito, yung mga background nila, kasi it will tell us also kung ano mga priorities. Very interesting yan. Ako yun ang tinitignan ko din minsan. And at the same time, siguro importante na tignan din natin paano ba. At not, I think na very important is tignan natin kung anong proseso nila. Kasi maraming mga, propaganda against the process of China when you talk about politics. But if you really look at it, it's very interesting to see kung paano nila kinakraft ang kanilang mga policy agenda and legislative agenda. At makikita mo na some people would say na hindi siya flexible. Pero actually, if you really look at it and study it, napaka-flexible nila kasi even the constitution, they can change it every 5 years. Kung paano inaakma nila, even yung basic basic law of the land nila, doon sila pragmatic. Sa sabi nga na choose economic provision of the Constitution, hirap na hirap tayong i-push yan. Pero sa kanila, if you really look at the Chinese politics, no, napaka-pragmatic nila at how do you call that, napaka-flexible na, I mean, the basic laws of the land and the policies nila, they have to adapt it to the current realities that the country is facing, China is facing. Ganun sila ka-flexible. And siguro, isa pa sa pinaka-importante na dadagdag ko kay Jed when you talk about yung economic policy is I think agriculture. Ano ba ang magiging forma ng agriculture development ng China at paano nga ba ang Pilipinas makaka-benefit from that? And another thing I think is information technology or what you call digitalization or digital technology. Kasi kailangan natin yan sa Pilipinas. So probably, pwede tayong makakita dyan ng something na pwede natin malabi na nabigyan tayo ng investment or bigay sila ng tulong sa atin at infrastructure. Yung BRI is a priority ng China and it just celebrated its 10th anniversary. It's an expanding, it's a very successful program, I think, thus far at the moment. No? So isa yan sa maging very interesting na dapat tignan. Yung Maritime Silk Road din is important. Kasi dalawa yan may road ka at may maritime ka, the sea and the land-based part ng BRI. At saka ano yung mga priority countries nila na papasok na kung saan nandyan yung BRI na yan. At sana i-capitalize ni President BBM ang synergy ng BRI sa ating infrastructure program. Maraming salamat, Wilson, at sa mga kaibigan.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations din, Jed. And have a good lunch. Padala
Yes.
ko ng lunch
Uy, papadala ko ng lunch sa'yo, ha? Ipapa-rider ko, don't worry. Papa-rider ko sa bahay mo ang lunch ngayon and regalong pandesal. Thank you again to the very eloquent Professor Ana Malindogoy and the very eloquent Dr. Aaron Jed Ravena for sharing with us this. Akala ko nagjo-joke yun mga businessmen at diplomats who requested this session of the Pandesal Forum. Akala ko nagjo-joke. Sabi sa akin, pwede ba kaya mag-Pandesal Forum sa linggo? Sabi ko, linggo, wala nga pumapasok sa office, pati sa gobyerno, lahat pagtatawagan mo, baka tulog pa sa umaga, di ba? Tapos, sinek ko sa media, foreign media, this is really a big thing pala, 2 sessions. Tayo lang sa Pilipinas ang hindi masyadong aware pa. Pero sa Europe, sa Amerika, sa Middle East, alam nila itong 2 sessions sa media nila. So thank you very much again to Professor Ana Malindogoy, to Dr. Aaron Jetravena for giving us a crash course on geopolitics, on China's phenomenon of economic revival, and anti-poverty success, and also anong future of Philippine-China relations. Hopefully, if we handle our small disagreements well, sana we can benefit from these 2 sessions and the revival of the world's number 2 biggest economy. We have to have a picture, Dr. Ravena and si Professor Ana. Sorry, yung